Hello and welcome to the CNBC-TV18 special. I'm Shereen, Bhan, and I have a very special guest joining me today, Satya Nadella. Good to have you back on the channel and great seeing you here in India. Let me start by asking you about Microsoft's plans for India in the coming decade in terms of strategic importance, in terms of investments, hiring, innovation. Draw out the roadmap for me for India.
Yeah, first of all, Shereen, it's great to be back in India. And, you know, India is very important to us. I mean, let's start with sort of the human capital we have. Next to sort of Seattle and the Redmond area, the number of engineers we have in India is the second biggest center. So we are very excited about how India is contributing to Microsoft worldwide. But India as a market is changing radically. In fact, if you sort of look back at the last 10 years, the penetration of mobile and cloud has made it possible, I think, for the next 10 years to perhaps be the time when every small business to large business is being transformed by technology. Even this morning, when I was talking, you know, from pyramidal glass to what Reliance is doing across the board, or what Apollo Hospitals is, in fact, built out a new model for cardiac issues, which is using Indian data to benefit the South Asian population worldwide. These are all amazing examples of, I think, how technology can make broad sectoral progress around economic growth and productivity.
You know, you spoke about the importance of India from a human capital perspective, but given the potential of the Indian economy, as well as the way that you're seeing this play out from a digital transformation perspective, what is it going to mean in terms of revenues for Microsoft?
First of all, I think we will be only successful if India is successful. In fact, one of the things that is super important to recognize in our business model is we will do well in India if India, Inc., all the way from small business to large business does well. Because that's the fundamental thing. If digital technology is going to lead to local surplus, right, when hospitals are becoming better at delivering healthcare with lower costs, when energy companies are becoming more efficient in making the world, India more sustainable, when retail companies here are going to be competitive, in fact, versus multinationals coming in, that's when we will succeed. So our goal is to, in fact, commoditize digital technology, if anything. It's not profit for profit's sake. It's profit ultimately coming from India, Inc. being successful.
You know, in terms of regulatory disruption or regulatory headwinds, how much of a concern is the data localization aspect in India, and globally the fact that we are possibly going to see a digital tax coming in at the end of this calendar year? Will that be a disruptive force as well? I
mean, one of the things that, you know, we should fully expect, and in fact, take privacy. Privacy is a human right. I mean, you know, coming out of the European Union and GDPR, we effectively have regulation already, which is now going to be everywhere. And even in India, we are going to take the same approach, which is when we took even GDPR regulation, we didn't just do this for Europe. In fact, we took the subject rights and made it available worldwide. So we are going to fully conform to the laws. Already our investments we have made in our data center footprint with local data residency is a step in that direction. So I fully expect us to obviously both have more regulation, whether it's around privacy, whether it's around ethics in AI, and even on taxation. You mentioned, you know, we are going to, you know, the fundamental construct I believe in is in every country you operate in, you pay taxes.
Or you should.
And you should, and that's what we do. In fact, we've already changed, and in fact, I'm very encouraged by even what OECD is trying to get done, which is to come up with some consistent rules that are worldwide rules, and a tax reform that happens where we have, you know, I would say certainty, consistency, simplicity. But we fully expect to be paying taxes everywhere we operate.
You know, I want to pick up on something that you mentioned in your talk, and you said that you know, you're in the process of trying to democratize technology, but that sort of flies in the face of conventional wisdom with the tech companies saying that, look, we want everybody else to build their own tech intensity. The logic would have been that come to us because we're the most capable and we're going to help you build it out. So how does that sort of work for you, and how do you see this playing itself out?
In fact, that is, I think, going to be the key distinction. If you sort of believe that every company going forward in every industry, irrespective of size, is going to be a software company or a digital company, you have to believe in somehow democratizing digital technology and making it a real factor of production. So a healthcare company will have software engineers. In fact, the interesting thing is, even in India as we speak, 70+% of the software engineering jobs are already outside of what is considered the tech industry. So if anything, our job as a platform company is to make those software engineers working across all the industries in India more productive, more successful in using digital to change their own core business, right? How can they deliver better health care? How can the energy company be more efficient? Public sector be more, efficient. That's really our core goal.
So what is that going to mean in terms of tangible action for Microsoft specifically? Are we going to see more collaboration? Are we going to see more partnerships? What is this going to do in terms of determining the course of future M&A for you?
For us, ultimately, in fact, even in the keynote I just delivered, it was sort of great to see the amazing examples, right? Whether it's Reliance or Apollo Hospitals or Royal Enfield, the bike that I always dream one day I'll have, all of these using digital technology. I did actually. But that's really what I look forward to seeing, which is more and more think of digital as just an input. What you create. In fact, I always say that customers for us are really partners who take technology from us to create their own technology. In fact, it's not about dependence on us, it's their ability to build their own independence using some of our input. That's really ultimately our mission.
You said that you've introspected on the decade gone by, and what concerns you is the narrow impact that technology has had, and you would like it to be much more secular, diverse, and broad-based. What is the role of the corporation? What is the role of the government in being able to achieve that objective?
Yeah, I think that when I look at it, first of all, the last decade has been tremendous.
Yes.
As I said, mobile revolution, cloud took off, consumer internet applications. That's great, except it's still narrow in comparison to the full economy, right? What about agriculture? What about healthcare? What about energy and so on? So to me, that's what I look forward to in the next decade. And governments, here's the way I think about it. It's about companies, the civic society, and governments all working together, right? That economic progress and social progress have to happen in tandem, and they happen in tandem when every constituent is coming together, setting policy, being pushed to do the right allocation so that one can really have that broad spectrum. Because one of the other issues we have to deal with is the economic growth more equitable, right? Take something like an agricultural sector in India, which employs a lot of people. It not only has to become more productive, but we need to also make sure that the small farmer is not being crowded out. And so that ability, that's where the governments can play a huge role.
So let me end by asking you, as a CEO, on your dashboard today, what are the key risks that you're looking out for? And this trend that we're seeing, you're heading Microsoft, Adobe has Shantanu Narayan, IBM now has an Indian origin CEO. What do you make of the rise of Indian origin CEOs in the Valley and beyond?
On the risk side, one of my hopes is that we actually have to confront, as a multinational CEO, I think about if we are not creating local surplus in every country, in every community, then we have no right to operate in that country and community. So therefore, staying true, in our case, to our business model and our mission. When you come to India, it has to be India first. What are the small businesses we have made more productive? How have we made public sector in India more efficient? The large multinationals out of India more competitive globally? That's ultimately the KPI. And in terms of the rise of, I'll call it the Indian managers, I think it sort of speaks to the human capital of this country. In fact, at some level, somebody described this to me as if you sort of take, it's a numerator. We have a lot of, we have 1 billion plus people. Yes. And so 1/5 of the CEOs in the world someday should be Indian. And so if that is the case, then we have less representation.
Well, we hope for more representation, and congratulations on winning the India Business Leader Awards for the Global Business Icon of the Year. And thank you very much for your time here on CNBC-TV18. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Shereen.
Well, we are going to take a break, but don't go anywhere. When we return, the conversation between Mukesh Ambani and Satya Nadella on the CNBC-TV18 special. Back in a moment.
Like how Indian economy will grow and how digital will be a big part of it. Maybe share your thoughts on how you see perhaps this economy thrive in the next 10 years?
Absolutely. Before I answer that, Satya, on behalf of all of us, a very warm welcome to India and Mumbai. And I can tell you that I wanted to warmly congratulate you on your leadership and the transformation and the success of Microsoft over the last many years. And I think every Indian is very, very proud.
Appreciate it.
what I admire about and what I learn in terms of saying that if in your leadership style, what you've demonstrated that if you have empathy, if you rely on partnerships and build trusts and relationships, and if you think about every mistake as a learning opportunity, and if you believe that it's not products or profit, but really people and their continuous reinvention of capability, that's the strength of the organization. I think all of us in India Inc. are inspired, and thank you for all your leadership. Personally, I am very committed, and I'm very privileged, Satya, that you have committed to India on a scale that I never anticipated that a multinational will. And we are very excited about the partnership that Jio and Microsoft will have. And I think that that will be, as we look at this decade, will be a defining partnership. So Thank you for your commitment to India.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now, let me answer your question. I think that, as we are speaking, President Trump has arrived in Ahmedabad, and the India that he will see in 2020 is very different from the India that either President Carter saw or Clinton saw when he came in 2020, or even Obama, right? We are having millions of people on the street, each one of them having their own personal experience with their phones, and the network strong enough. And I think, like, I can easily say that the mobile networks in India now are better or at par with anybody else in the world. And that's the big change. When he reaches the stadium, right, and you talked about stadium, the infrastructure in that stadium in terms of digital is better than any other place in the world. So that is the India as we start in 2020. If you then even think about your own journey and think about 1992 when you joined Microsoft, right? India was $300 billion. Today, India is $3 trillion. And fundamentally, right, this whole progress, right, in a certain way has happened on the back of technology. In the early days, it was Rajesh's TCS, Infosys, and all of them who drove technology in India. And that really kick-started with all the economic reforms, kick-started this whole growth paradigm. It was supercharged in 2014 when Prime Minister gave us the vision of Digital India. And if you then see what followed, and I was again privileged to play a very small role in it in terms of with the launch of Jio. And just to share with you and the audience, pre-Jio, right, we had 256 kbps, which we called broadband in India. And post-Jio, we now have 21 Mbps on mobile data as the average speed available in every single village in India.
That's amazing.
Pre-Jio, price of data in this country was between 300 and 500 rupees. And for the poorest of poor, right, who used 2G, the price was as high as 10,000 rupees a GB. Post-Jio, the price is between 12 and 14 rupees a GB. And the usage, right, and a lot of what Jio has achieved in the last 3 years is 38 crore people, 380 million customers have migrated to this 4G technology. And that tells you the enthusiasm in the youth of India, the enthusiasm in consumption in India, and the enthusiasm even in my mother, who's 85 years old, and the amount of time she spends, right? So in your language, she has the greatest tech intensity and tech adoption. So I think that's really what has happened. So consumption has also gone up, and this has really become a people's movement. And when you then talk about the financial sector, right, we just introduced UPI, and with digitization in December, right, we had 100% growth, and total UPI transactions in this country digitally were 2 lakh crores. So what has happened is that because we've got infrastructure, right, we are accelerating, and we are just at the beginning of this whole journey.
And that's one of the things, Mukesh, I was going to ask you, because in some sense, all of what you've done in laying out the network capability, you talked about what that has led to, this, people being empowered, consuming more, using more, and you have the best rates and connectivity today. Now, you also have an ambition to say, what can you do for small businesses, medium businesses, large, because you're now even saying, okay, how do we, in fact, our partnership in some sense is about how do you take what I talked about, combine it with your domain expertise, your technology, and completely change even the landscape of broad sectoral change.
So let me, again, Satya, start with saying that Reliance was founded as a startup, even before startups became, like my father founded Reliance with a table and a chair and 1,000 rupees. It was 5 decades ago. It then became a micro industry, then it became a small industry, medium. Today, you can consider us large. Right? I have been, again, very fortunate in terms of knowing Steve and Bill from my Stanford days. So it was even before Microsoft was founded. Steve was being recruited by Bill.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've seen the growth of Microsoft since
There
then.
must have been something in the air that both of you dropped out.
And why I'm saying this is fundamentally to just drive the point that every small business and entrepreneur, right, has the potential in India to become a Dhirubhai Ambani or a Bill Gates. And that is the power, that is what differentiates India from the rest of the world. I think that the entrepreneurial power that we have at the grassroots is enormous. And what this decade will offer, right, and if we even see the opening balance of small, medium, and micro enterprises, right, we have to realize that for India, they really provide 70%, even without any enablement, right? They provide 70% of India's employment. They drive 40% of India's export.
Yeah.
And they are critical to all the economic activity that we see. And they have done this, again, with zero technical enablement and adoption. So the opportunity there is to really go from no technology, no digitization, and really pole vault to adopt. And our opportunity between Jio and Microsoft is to really give them full service to make sure that they are fully enabled with the tool set, the data sets, because the mindset exists, right, to really propel India forward. And that is even a bigger opportunity than the consumer piece that we have seen in the last few years.
That's tremendous. I mean, maybe we can close out. I mean, you sort of referenced how your father, 5 decades ago got started with a dream and a hope of what is possible and created what is today, one of the most amazing stories in business. When you now leading this organization, look out, what sort of drives you? What inspires you? What is it that you would like to see happen?
Well, I think that the opportunity that we have for India really is the opportunity to become the premier digital society in the world. I think with all the components that are coming in place, right, as we grow and march forward, right, I have no doubt in my mind that we will become among the top 3 economies in the world. Right? 20 years ago, we were saying, okay, where will India be? Now I think that if you talk to anybody, there is no doubt in anybody's mind. We can argue about whether it will happen in 5 years or 10 years, but it's going to happen. And we will be in the top 3 economies in the world. When that happens, right, our opportunity is, will we be the most technically enabled society? Will we be having all our development enabled by all the tools of technology? Can we really be a pace setter in terms of using all technology? And again, what our Prime Minister says is, can we then use technology for businesses so that businesses have ease of doing business, but we then in partnership deliver ease of living for every citizen of India and build a society that is equal, has ethics, and really gives equal opportunity to empower everybody to find their potential. And that, I think, in the coming 2 decades, right, is the opportunity that India has. What next generations of India will see is a very different India than what you and I have grown up in. And I think all of us should be working towards that. Our own partnership between Jio and Microsoft, right, will work with businesses from startups to micro enterprises to merchants and shopkeepers to really large enterprises in partnership, really to drive and enable and build this new India.
In fact, one thing that Akash will sort of really be on me if I don't mention is even gaming. I think in the next decade, you may become a gamer.
That's difficult, but I think that again, Akash is very excited in terms of India. Gaming doesn't really exist in India. And with everything that we're doing in xCloud and our broadband connectivity, right, I think that there is huge potential. And for some of us who don't know what gaming is, right, it's very hard to imagine that gaming will be bigger than music, movies, and TV shows all put together. But we will see.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mukesh. Thank you for your leadership and success.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
RBL Bank, celebrating over 7.5 million customers across India.
Honoring those